went to the wrap party, that this was it for the Andy Griffith Show.
What if I told you that one of Hollywood's nicest guys, Ron Howard, actually had someone he couldn't stand? Someone who made his childhood on one of America's most beloved TV shows absolutely miserable? Well, buckle up, because today we're diving deep into a story that will completely change how you see the Andy Griffith Show forever. You know Ron Howard as the sweet little red-headed boy who played Opie Taylor, right? The kid who called Andy Griffith Pa, and made us all believe in the magic of small-town America. But what you don't know is that behind those innocent freckles and that adorable smile was a young boy who dreaded going to work every single day because of one particular cast member who made his life absolutely horrible. This isn't just some Hollywood gossip. This is a story about how even the most perfect-looking TV families can hide some pretty dark secrets. And trust me, by the end of this video, you'll never watch Mayberry the same way again. Let me paint you a picture. It's 1960, and a little 6-year-old boy named Ronnie Howard is about to become one of the most famous child actors in America. The Andy Griffith Show was just starting, and everyone thought it would be this magical experience where the cast would become like a real family. The show was supposed to represent everything good about America: kindness, family values, and that warm feeling you get when you think about simpler times. But here's the thing about TV magic. It's just that, magic. An illusion. And sometimes, the people creating that illusion are nothing like the characters they play on screen. Ron Howard was born into show business. His dad was an actor, his mom was an actress, and little Ronnie was practically raised on movie sets. By the time he was 5 years old, he had already appeared in several TV shows and movies. He was a natural, the kind of kid who could make you believe anything just by looking at you with those big, innocent eyes. When he got cast as Opie Taylor, everyone thought it was perfect. Here was this sweet, well-behaved little boy who would play the son of America's favorite sheriff. Andy Griffith was supposed to be like a second father to him, and Aunt Bee was supposed to be the loving, caring woman who would look after him like her own grandson. But that's where our story takes a dark turn. Frances Bavier played Aunt Bee, and she was supposed to be the heart of the Taylor family. On screen, she was everything you'd want in a TV aunt. She cooked amazing meals, gave great advice, and always had a warm hug ready when Opie needed it. America fell in love with Aunt Bee. She represented that perfect grandmother figure that everyone wishes they had in their family. But the real Frances Bavier was nothing like Aunt Bee. Nothing at all. While Andy Griffith was warm and friendly to everyone on set, Frances Bavier was cold as ice. She didn't want to be bothered with small talk, she didn't want to hang out with the other actors between takes, and she definitely didn't want to deal with a chatty little kid who was just trying to do his job. Imagine being 6 years old and having to work with someone who treats you like you're just an annoying pest. Someone who never smiles at you unless the cameras are rolling. Someone who makes you feel like you're doing something wrong just by being there. That's exactly what little Ron Howard had to deal with every single day. Ron has talked about how confused he was as a child. He couldn't understand why this woman who was supposed to love him like a grandmother on TV couldn't even be nice to him when the cameras weren't rolling. He would try to talk to her, try to connect with her the way kids do, but she would just brush him off or ignore him completely. One of the worst experiences happened during the famous pickle episode. You know, the one where Opie has to eat Aunt Bee's terrible homemade pickles and pretend they taste good? Well, here's something you probably didn't know. Ron Howard absolutely hated pickles in real life. He couldn't stand them. But because he was a professional, even at that young age, he ate those disgusting pickles take after take after take. But the worst part wasn't even eating the pickles he hated. The worst part was having to act like he loved his TV aunt while she sat there treating him like he was just some kid getting in her way. He had to smile and call her Aunt Bee and act like she was the most wonderful person in the world, all while she was making him feel small and unwanted. Now, you might be thinking, well, maybe she was just having a bad day, or maybe she was just shy. But this wasn't a one-time thing. This went on for 8 years. 8 years of Ron Howard having to pretend to love someone who clearly didn't want anything to do with him. Other people on the set noticed it too. Howard Morris, who played Ernest T. Bass and also directed some episodes, once said that working with Frances Bavier was like walking through a minefield. You never knew what was going to set her off. She was incredibly particular about everything: where she stood, how the lights hit her, what she was supposed to say. And if you asked her to change even the smallest thing, she would get upset. But with Ron, it was different. It wasn't just that she was difficult to work with. It was that she seemed to actively dislike him. She never tried to make him feel welcome. She never treated him like the child he was. She just saw him as another actor she had to deal with, and she made it clear that she didn't enjoy dealing with him at all. Andy Griffith tried to make things better. He was like a real father figure to Ron, always making sure he felt comfortable on set, always protecting him from the harder parts of show business. But even Andy Griffith couldn't fix the problem between Ron and Frances Bavier. The tension was so bad that other cast members started to notice. Don Knotts, who played Barney Fife, would sometimes step in to try to lighten the mood when things got too uncomfortable. But everyone knew that something was wrong between Aunt Bee and Little Opie, even though they all tried to keep it professional for the sake of the show. As Ron got older, he started to understand that this wasn't normal. He began to realize that most adults don't treat children the way Frances Bavier treated him. He started to see that her behavior was about her, not about him. But that doesn't mean it didn't hurt. When you're a kid and an adult treats you badly, you always wonder if it's somehow your fault. The crazy thing is that Frances Bavier was actually a really good actress. She could turn on the charm the moment the director called action. She could be the perfect, loving Aunt Bee for the cameras. But the second they called cut, that warmth would disappear completely. It was like watching someone flip a switch. Ron has said in interviews that this experience taught him a lot about acting, but not in a good way. He learned that some people can be completely fake, that they can pretend to be someone they're not so convincingly that millions of people will believe it. But he also learned that just because someone can act loving doesn't mean they actually are loving. This whole situation got even weirder when the Andy Griffith show ended. Most of the cast stayed in touch with each other. Andy Griffith and Ron Howard remained close friends for the rest of Andy's life. Don Knotts and Ron had a great relationship. But Frances Bavier, she basically disappeared. She moved to a small town in North Carolina and became a hermit. She didn't want to talk to reporters, she didn't want to do interviews about the show, and she definitely didn't want to stay in touch with her former cast members. It was like she wanted to erase that whole part of her life. But here's where the story gets really interesting. Years later, when Frances Bavier was dying, she did something that nobody expected. She picked up the phone and called Andy Griffith. After decades of being difficult, after years of treating people badly on set, she finally apologized. She told Andy that she was sorry for being so hard to work with. She admitted that she had been difficult, and she said that it was her fault that there had been so much tension on the set. She even said that she thought Andy was a great leader and that the show's success was because of him. But notice who she didn't call? Ron Howard. The little boy she had been so cold to for 8 years never got an apology. He never got an explanation. He never got closure. And that tells you everything you need to know about the kind of person Frances Bavier really was. Even at the end of her life, when she was trying to make peace with people, she still couldn't bring herself to apologize to the child she had treated so poorly. Ron Howard has handled all of this with incredible grace. He's never publicly trashed Frances Bavier, even though he had every right to. He's never tried to ruin her reputation or make her look bad. He's just been honest about what happened, in that quiet, classy way that Ron Howard handles everything. But you can tell that it still bothers him. In interviews, when people ask about the Andy Griffith Show, he always lights up when he talks about Andy Griffith and Don Knotts. His whole face changes when he remembers the good times with them. But when Frances Bavier comes up, you can see something shift in his expression. It's subtle, but it's there. The hurt is still there, even after all these years. This experience shaped Ron Howard in ways that probably helped make him the director he became. When he started directing movies, he became known for being incredibly kind to child actors. He goes out of his way to make sure kids on his sets feel safe and welcomed. He learned from his own painful experience how important it is for adults to treat children with respect and kindness. It's also probably why Ron Howard has never been involved in any major Hollywood scandals. He saw firsthand how ugly people can be behind the scenes, and he decided early on that he never wanted to be that kind of person. He wanted to be the Andy Griffith of his own sets, not the Frances Bavier. The really sad part is that this tension affected the show itself. If you go back and watch some of the episodes now, knowing what you know, you can sometimes see it. There are moments where the chemistry between Opie and Aunt Bee feels forced. There are scenes where Ron's smile doesn't quite reach his eyes when he's looking at Frances Bavier. The magic that should have been there just isn't quite there. But here's the thing that makes this story even more heartbreaking. Ron Howard was just a little kid. He was doing his best to be professional and do a good job, but he was still just a child who wanted the adults around him to like him. And one of those adults just refused to show him any warmth or kindness. Frances Bavier had her own issues, obviously. Some people have suggested that she was dealing with personal problems, or that she was uncomfortable with fame, or that she just wasn't good with children. But whatever her reasons were, they don't excuse how she treated an innocent little boy who was just trying to do his job. The Andy Griffith Show was supposed to be about family, about community, about people taking care of each other. But behind the scenes, there was a child who wasn't being taken care of by one of the people who was supposed to love him most. That's the real tragedy of this story. Ron Howard went on to become one of the most successful directors in Hollywood. He's won Oscars, he's made movies that have touched millions of people, and he's built a reputation as one of the nicest, most professional people in the business. But it all started with a little red-headed boy who had to learn way too young that not all adults are kind, and that sometimes the people who seem the nicest on TV can be the coldest in real life. Frances Bavier died in 1989, and she took her reasons for treating Ron so poorly to her grave. We'll never know why she was so cold to him, why she couldn't find it in her heart to be kind to a child who just wanted to do his job and maybe get a little encouragement along the way. But Ron Howard's story didn't end with that pain. He took that experience and used it to become better. He used it to make sure that other child actors would never have to go through what he went through. He turned his hurt into help for others. And that's probably the most important lesson from this whole sad story. Sometimes people will treat you badly for reasons that have nothing to do with you. Sometimes adults will fail you, even when they're supposed to be taking care of you. But you get to choose what you do with that pain. You can let it make you bitter, or you can let it make you better. Ron Howard chose to be better. And that's why, even though Frances Bavier made his childhood difficult, Ron Howard became the kind of person who makes other people's lives easier. So the next time you watch the Andy Griffith Show, remember that behind that sweet little boy's smile was a real kid dealing with real hurt. But also remember that he grew up to be proof that you can overcome the worst treatment and still choose to treat others with kindness. That's the real story of Ron Howard and the woman he utterly despised. It's not a pretty story, but it's a human story. And in the end, it's a story about how the best of us can rise above the worst treatment and still choose to be good. If this story shocked you as much as it shocked me, make sure to hit that like button and let me know in the comments what you think about this whole situation. Have you ever had to deal with an adult who treated you unfairly when you were a kid? And don't forget to subscribe for more behind-the-scenes Hollywood stories that will change how you see your favorite shows and movies forever. Trust me, there are so many more secrets waiting to be uncovered, and you won't want to miss a single one.